Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is packed full of some really quick and easy Christmas ornaments. For this ornament, we are going to be using some of these little plaques that I found at Dollar Tree. I thought these would be perfect to make a couple little ornaments out of these very quickly. So I painted each of them with a couple coats of some white chalk paint just to go over the images. Then I'm going to use some of my archival ink and a couple of my Christmas stamps that I got from Amazon, and I'm just going to stamp all of these. I ended up doing a Christmas tree, a reindeer with a sleigh, and then for the third one I did a music note stamp with Silent Night. Then to finish them off, I just added some gold velvet ribbon in the holes that were already pre-drilled. For this next ornament, we are making some very classy ornaments out of some Dollar Tree clear plastic ones. I have some ribbon, some pearls, some red berries, and some dried flowers. I am just going to randomly put these into these clear baubles from Dollar Tree just to make some very pretty little ornaments. You can add different color ribbons to these, different kinds of flowers. You could even add in some of the Christmas tree greenery to these if you wanted to do a more green color instead of the red. And to finish them off, I'm using some European gold rub and buff to go over all the little toppers. For this ornament, I'm using another one of Dollar Tree's clear plastic balls. This one is a larger one, and I'm adding a little bit of water to a squirt bottle, and then I'm going to pour in a little bit of some metallic gold paint. You can choose whatever color you want, but once I do that, then I'm just going to start spraying this into the clear ornament and twirling it around to get that color all over this ball. And since I mixed the paint with some water, it's going to give it a more translucent appearance. Once I have it fully coated, then I will turn this upside down and let it completely dry. Just make sure you put something under this for that paint to run back out onto. For the fun part of this, we're going to make this ornament look snow covered using some Dollar Tree spackling. Just going to use my fingers and a little bit of that spackling and rub this all over my ornament. Once I have it coated, then I will set this aside and let that spackling harden. To make sure that spackling stays put and none of it falls off of my ornament, I'm going to spray this with some Aleene's acrylic sealer. For these next ornaments, I'm using some of these fabric gift bags from Dollar Tree. And they do usually have these every year, just sometimes the pattern may be a little different. For the first one of the little snowflake, I am just going to trim around that snowflake, leaving a little bit of the edge. Then I did the same for the Christmas tree one. I'm going to turn these into some little stuffed ornaments, so I'm using just some little cotton balls, and I like to pull those apart before using them as stuffing. And then for each of these, I'm going to use some hot glue to make a little pocket to put the stuffing inside. And I'm not going to add a ton of stuffing in these. I still want them to maintain the shape. Then I'll use a little more hot glue just to close up those pockets. To roughen up the edges and make them look more natural, I'm just using a little sanding block and going around both of these. Then to add some velvet ribbon for hanging, I am just going to poke a hole there at the top of these. Using another one of Dollar Tree's clear ornaments, I wanted to make a gold leaf ornament. The first thing I am doing for this one is painting it white with a little bit of chalk paint mixed with baking soda. Once I have it painted, I'll set it aside and let it completely dry. These are the gold leaf sheets that I have for this project. I got these on Amazon, and I'm just going to carefully place my gold leaf sheet onto a plate, and then I'm going to rub some Mod Podge all over my ball ornament. Now, once I have the Mod Podge on there, I am going to fan this a little bit just to dry some of the Mod Podge before sitting this down onto my gold leaf paper. And then I'm going to use that same brush and brush my gold leaf onto the ball ornament. Again, this is very delicate paper. Not all of it is going to stick, but you're going to get this really cool looking gilded ball. So really, I'm just kind of tapping that paintbrush onto this gilding, and then I will use the paintbrush to kind of sweep off any of the excess. For any areas that I wanted to add a little bit more gold to, I just put a little bit more of the Mod Podge, broke the pieces down into smaller pieces, and then just used my brush to pick those up and apply them to the ball. This is actually really a hack. I know that a lot of you have probably seen people make the amber glass ornaments using some alcohol ink, but those alcohol inks can be really expensive. So I grabbed some food coloring that you can get at any grocery store, some red and some green. If you can find brown, that's even better. And then I mixed up that red and green to make brown and added just a little bit of Mod Podge in a little squirt bottle from Dollar Tree. I did a lot of experimenting with this little hack, and you definitely don't want to use a lot of Mod Podge to get that clear looking amber glass. So just experiment with it. You can mix the green a little more, mix the red a little more, and get different variations of this brown color. But you'll definitely want to keep this kind of runny and watery as you do this. Just pour it into your clear baubles and then mix it around until it is fully covered. Then you can just pour the excess into the next one and keep going with it. Like I said, if you want to, you can definitely change up the color by adding a little more red or a little more green. I ended up doing a few brown ones and then a few that were more green. But once you are finished with this, you can pour this back into your little container that you're using and just continue to use that excess to make a whole bunch of these, and it's very inexpensive. And if you prefer brighter colors, you can just do the red, green, blue, yellow that most food coloring packages come in. Just try out any variation that you would prefer, and then once you're done with these, just turn them upside down on a piece of cardboard and let them dry. Another ornament hack that you've probably seen are the DIY flocked or velvet ornaments using flocking powder. Now, I did buy some flocking powder and I will show you what I did with that later. But if you are uninterested in making a huge mess and really want to do these quickly, grab some Dollar Tree sparkly ornaments and then give these a couple coats of whatever color paint you want. And this really gives the look of flocked ornaments without the mess. I do recommend using a flat or matte paint for this hack so that you can really get that nice velvety look on these ornaments. And you could also try this on other sparkly ornaments from Dollar Tree. If you would prefer to do the other flocked look, you can buy these little baggies of flocking off of Etsy. I'll make sure I put the link below for you where I got mine, but I did grab a few different colors, and you'll just need to start out by painting your ornament a similar color to whatever the flocking color is. Then I found this easiest to work with by pouring it into a little cup that's kind of bendable. And then for this flocking, you will definitely want to give your ornament a heavy coating of Mod Podge, and you'll want to kind of do this quickly so the Mod Podge doesn't dry before you can get the flocking on. Once I had my ornament covered, then I'm just going to take that cup and I'm going to sprinkle this flocking powder all over my ornament. Do it heavy because the first time I tried this, I just kind of sprinkled it just a little bit and it just did not work out very well. So you definitely want to coat this very heavily, and then once you have it all coated, you can kind of spin the ornament around and see if there are any spots that are missing the flocking, and just use your fingers to sprinkle more over those spots. And once you have everything covered, you can kind of tap it in with your fingers if it's not really sticking. Now I will say that this method is quite messy, and even after the Mod Podge dries, it does shed quite a bit, so just be aware of that. I wanted to make some frame ornaments for my feather tree, and these little gold plastic frames that I got from the thrift store are gonna be perfect and lightweight for the feather tree. You can also grab these at pretty much any craft store, but I'm also wanting to use these little brass corner pieces that I got from Amazon, and I'm just gonna add these to the top and the bottom to give this a more vintage Victorian look. Once I have those corner pieces added to the top and the bottom of the frames, then I'm going to go over all three of these frames with some of my European gold rub and buff just to make them match the corner pieces a little better and tone down that gold. So for the inside of these frames, I'm going to be using some of this damask scrapbook paper that I got from Amazon, and I'm just going to add it to some of this chipboard that I also got off of Amazon just to make this a little sturdier and thicker. So I'm just using a glue stick to add this paper to that chipboard, and then I'll just cut off the excess once I've glued this down. Then I'm just going to use each of those frames, and on the back side of that scrapbook paper and chipboard, I'll just kind of trace around the inside of those frames. They have a little lip, so I was able to make these fit pretty perfectly inside those frames. Then to embellish these frames a little further, I'm actually going to use some of this Chanel frayed ribbon that I also got from Amazon, and it is a very thin and kind of see-through, so each of the pieces that I cut down for the frame, I'm actually going to fold them over onto itself 3 times. I'm adding a little dab of hot glue on each of these just to keep them folded over and keep them from coming undone. Now I made sure to keep these a little longer than my frame is wide because, as you can see here, I kind of want to fold over the center over the end parts of it. If it makes sense, you'll be able to see right here what I'm talking about. I just kind of glued each end to the inside of the frame where I wanted it, and then once I had those ends glued down, I have a lot of excess fabric in the center, so I'm able to make a little fold and then hot glue those over top of the edges. Hopefully that makes sense. I did slow down the video and not speed it up right here just so you could see what I was talking about. I wanted it to kind of look like a bow sort of in the center of this, so that's why I am folding over those edges. But I'm just going to end up doing this to all 3 of the frames the same exact way. Then on the center of each of these ribbons, I wanted to add a little Christmas stamp with some Christmas sayings on there. And these stamps are from Amazon and they just have little Christmas sayings on them. So once I finish stamping each of these, then I'll just add some ribbon. It definitely would not be a Victorian Christmas tree without some candles, so I decided to make some for my feather trees just using some clothespins. I bought a big box of them off of Amazon. It was just cheaper that way, and I'm just going to use about 10 of these and take my hot glue gun to start and make little drippy wax all over my clothespins. I am kind of making sure that I get a lot of hot glue in that little indentation at the top here, just so that it'll look more like a real candle. Once all of my hot glue is dry, then I'm going to go in with some white chalk paint and just paint over all of these clothespins. Then to make the flames for the candles, I'm actually going to use some of these jumbo craft sticks, and I'm just going to cut each end of the craft stick to make those little flames. After I cut all of these, then I'm just using a sandpaper sheet and sanding off any rough edges. I mixed up a dark orange color paint, and I'm going to paint all of my little flames using this color, doing the front and back side. Then I'm going to dry brush a really light yellow color over these flames, but I'm leaving that little center portion that orange color. Then once everything was dry, I'm going to take this little poker tool thing that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm just making a hole down in the center of the clothespin, and then using some floral wire, I'm going to hot glue the floral wire to the back of the flame and then glue that little floral wire down into the hole that I made. And this just makes that flame extra secure onto the candle. Once I finish putting everything together, then I'm going to go back in with a little more hot glue and kind of drip it down from the flame down onto the candle so that it looks like one piece. Then to finish these off, I'm just going back in with a little more white chalk paint and going over those new wax lines. For this ornament, I'm going to grab some chipboard and then just some scrapbook paper that I liked. This one wasn't a Christmassy scrapbook paper. It just had little red roses on it. But I'm going to glue this down to the chipboard just to make it a little thicker and more substantial. Then I just traced out this little ballerina from my computer and cut that down, and I'm going to use this as a template to make all my little ballerina ornaments. So as you can see, I just traced this on the back of the chipboard, and then I'm going to cut all of those out. Dressing up little paper dolls was very popular in the Victorian era, so I'm grabbing some of these little cupcake liners and I'm actually going to make the skirts for these ballerinas. I'm going to be using 2 of these cupcake liners per ballerina. For the first one, I'm just folding that over in half, and then I'm going to line this up with her waistline and fold over the side pieces to the back of her. Once I had that folded over and lined up, then I'm just going to add a little bit of hot glue to the back side of this to hold the cupcake liners. For the second cupcake liner, I'm actually going to fold it a little smaller than halfway, and then I'll cut off that excess part on the bottom. Then I'm going to layer this right on top of the first one and line it up with her waistline again, and then glue it to the back side. And once I have that second layer glued down, then I'm going to grab grab that piece that I cut off from this piece, and I'm gonna add that right to the top to make the third layer. Then I just continued doing the same thing for the rest of my ballerinas. To finish them off, I just added some velvet ribbon to their waistlines and then added a little hanger. For this ornament, we're going to make some spun cotton icicles. So I grabbed some cotton balls and some more of that Dollar Tree floral wire. And then to make this floral wire just a little sturdier, I'm going to fold it over onto itself and twist two pieces together. Once I had those made, then I'm going to start grabbing my cotton balls, and you're kind of going to want to start pulling these apart, but be very careful not to tear them, especially if you have the Dollar Tree cotton balls. They're a little smaller and a little harder to pull apart. So just do it slowly and be careful not to tear these. But as you're pulling these apart, you want to pull them long ways and make them as long as possible. And as you saw right there, I mixed up just a little bit of glue and water, and then here I'm just prepping that floral wire by making a hook at the top of it before dipping my cotton ball into that glue and water mixture. You'll definitely want to try to wring this out as best as possible, but once you have that glue and water mixture on your cotton ball, you're going to take it and wrap it around your piece of wire. And as you can see here, when I'm wrapping it, the longer you have your piece of cotton ball, then the longer your icicle will be. So just continue wrapping your cotton ball all the way around till you get to the bottom. And once you are finished, then you can kind of squish this together onto that wire. Now, once I got to the second one, I actually found it easier to just get that glue and water mixture on my fingers and kind of just squeeze it onto the cotton ball so that way it wasn't overly saturated and making a big mess. But just continue making your icicles until you've made however many you want to make. And then before you set these aside to let them dry, if you wanted to, you could add some glitter to these. I left mine plain and just set them aside and let them dry overnight. Once they were all dry the next day, then I just cut off the excess wire that was hanging from the bottom. Not only were paper dolls really popular in the Victorian era, but little wood or stick dolls were also popular ornaments. So I'm again using some clothespins, and then I also have these little candle cups that I got from Hobby Lobby. And since the nutcracker was a very popular story in the Victorian era, I am going to be making some little nutcracker dolls. So I'm also going to be using these tiny little dowels that I got from Dollar Tree, and I cut those down to make little arms for all of my nutcrackers. Once I had all their little arms glued to their bodies, then I'm going to go over all of these and give them a base coat of 1 coat of white chalk paint. And if you haven't guessed yet, I'm going to use those little candle cups as the nutcracker hats. So I'm going over those with a coat of black chalk paint. Now, once the nutcrackers were dry, then it was time to really go in and do a few details on these. I started by painting all of their little boots with some black chalk paint, and I just used a really stiff brush to kind of get a straight line, or as straight as it could be in my case, but I just continued to do all of their boots to start with. Then I decided to give 2 of my nutcrackers red jackets. So here I'm going in with my red, and I'm kind of trying to make their jacket look a little V'd, so it looks like they have a shirt underneath there, but it didn't quite work out too much. It was a little bit difficult to do this, so I do end up doing the other nutcrackers a little different. I actually give them a full jacket instead of trying to do the little V-neck on their jacket, just because it was a little easier. So for those other two, I'm just using some antique gold metallic paint, and this is the reason why I actually did that base coat of white chalk paint on these first, because using acrylic or the metallic paint, it just makes it so much easier to get good coverage. And once I had their jackets finished, then I just used one of my black paint markers, and I'm gonna make all of their little belts. Then I went in with a fine tip white marker and did the center pieces of their belts. And for the nutcrackers with the red jackets, I'm using a gold metallic paint pen and going around the rim of their boots. I also used that same gold paint pen to do the little buttons and little loops on his jacket. And then for the ones with the gold jacket, I actually just ended up using that same gold paint and a really tiny paintbrush to do the little tops of his boots. Then to finish these off, I needed to add their little hats, but before I add the hats to them, I'm gonna put some of this black velvet ribbon down in the hole of these candle cups, tie a knot, and then pull it up into the candle cup. Then I'll just loop this over and hot glue it together to make little hangers. And finally, to secure their hats, I'm just using some gel super glue. And that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.